Chapter 5. I woke up in the morning and saw the sun shining through the window. It made me smile at first, but when I noticed the streets and grass were completely clear of water, my face became puzzled. Even the tree that burned down was back to normal. I started to think that the storm was only a bad dream that I had. I looked around the room and spotted the bucket that my dad had took out to catch the leaking water. It was filled to the top, but when I looked to the roof, the crack was no longer there. I decided to check the rest of the house, so I went downstairs. I was shocked to see that the floor wasn't flooded. There wasn't even any signs that water had been there at all. I quickly walked outside. There were a few people walking around like normal, but others were looking around scratching their heads. They must have been wondering why the damage from the storm had vanished like I was. It was like the storm never occurred in the first place. Just then, Richard came outside of my house and marched over to me. "Are you responsible for this?" he asked aggressively. "Responsible for what?" I asked back. "The weather. Where was the storm? What happened to all the water?" I was glad he asked about the storm because it confirmed that it was not a dream I had. How could I have possibly been responsible for changing the weather? Well, someone had to be. I shook my head. "I know you're just joking, but sometimes it seems like you're serious. You really make it seem like you believed your ridiculous claims." I walked inside, and Richard followed. Henry, Suzanne, Elizabeth, and my dad were awake now, and looked just as confused as me. "I thought this whole town would be underwater by now," Henry said. "Was it all just a dream?" Suzanne asked. "Definitely not," Dad responded, stroking his beard. "We wouldn't all have the same vivid dream, but everything being normal all of a sudden is very strange." We all nodded in agreement. Richard turned on the TV and it went straight to the news channel. The mayor was speaking about the situation the town had experienced. "As you all know, there was an unexpected terrible storm that happened earlier this morning. I know it had everyone worried because the town did not seem prepared, but I did have a device that was able to help with the aftermath of any storm. That is why everything is back to normal so quickly." "How could any device get rid of all the damage left from a storm in 4 hours?" Elizabeth asked. "That's quite some device," my father stated. "Must have opened a hole in the ground to drain all the water," Henry said. "That doesn't sound like it would fix everything," Richard responded. "I think this just proves he has magic powers, and used them to fix the town." He chuckled. I looked at him while scowling, but I didn't say anything because I knew that he knew what I was going to say. "However," I heard the mayor say on TV, "it has come to my attention that the family of house number 49 has gone missing during the storm. If anyone knows anything about the sudden disappearance of the family, please inform me. That is all. Everyone have a good day." The TV went back to the normal channel. "Do you think they're okay?" Henry asked our dad. "Of course," our father responded. "They probably went to run some errands. But why would the mayor be worried if they only went shopping?" I asked. "Because of the storm. He just wants to make sure everyone is safe." "Maybe they were afraid of the storm and drove away," Suzanne suggested. "That's true, but I don't think it's likely considering how fast the storm picked up. They wouldn't want to go outside to get to their car." "There's only one way to find out," Richard said. "Let's go to the house to investigate." "Didn't the mayor say they aren't home?" Henry stated. "So why would we go to their house?" "Maybe they are home, but they're just hiding." We all looked at Richard. Everyone who wants to join me can tag along. Richard walked outside. Henry and I looked at each other, then followed him. Suzanne and Elizabeth did too. We tried to catch up with Richard, but for whatever reason, he was sprinting to the house of the missing family. "Richard, wait!" Henry yelled out. Richard stopped running, which allowed us to catch up to him. "Why are you running?" Richard put his hand on his chin and looked into the sky. "I don't remember," he answered. We then continued to walk to house number 49 together. Once we arrived, we stood still and stared at the house for a few seconds. It somehow appeared to be lifeless, even though it looked the same as all the other houses. Richard walked up to the door and knocked on it. We waited for a few minutes for someone to answer, but nobody did. Richard then tried to open the door, but it was locked. "I guess they really aren't home," Henry said. "Yeah, I guess not," Richard replied. He then looked through all the windows around the house before he walked back to us. Just then, a dark blue minivan pulled up slowly. The windows were tinted, so we could not see who was inside. We all backed up as it parked next to the sidewalk. The door to the driver's seat opened up and a man walked out. He had dark skin and was wearing baggy jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and sunglasses. He walked closer to us before he took his sunglasses off. Richard's expression changed from a blank one to a surprised one. "Jaqual," he said. "Is that you?" "Yeah, bro," the man responded. "I haven't seen you in a minute. What you been up to?" "Nothing much until right now. I'm looking for a missing family." "That's crazy. I'm here for the same reason." "Really? How do you know about it? Don't you live in the city?" "Don't worry about that. I think they're in danger." "Why?" "Because I know where they might be at if they aren't home." "Where?" "Come with me. I'll show you." Richard followed Jaqual to his car and got into the passenger seat. He then motioned us to get into the car too. Not much was said during the drive. Richard said a few random sentences, but nobody else spoke. We only traveled for a few minutes before Jaqual stopped the car. We were in the city, on a street I was not familiar with. It did not look like a bad place, but it was not fancy either. "Wait here," Jaqual said, as he got out of the car. We all sat quietly in the car and waited for him to return. I looked out the window and saw Jaqual standing in front of one of the houses, talking on the phone. He then approached the car and told us the missing family should be in the building. We all got out of the car and followed him inside. Once the 5 of us entered the building, Jaqual quickly went into another room. He was only away for a few seconds before he came back with a gun in his hand. "Get down on the ground," he yelled aggressively. "All 5 of you, get down now!" We were all startled by his sudden aggression and did as he said. "What's going on?" Suzanne asked nervously, trying not to cry. "Shut up," Jaqual pointed the gun directly at Suzanne, and she started shaking. "I know all of you have something to do with the disappearance of the Foreman's family." "Why would you think that?" I asked while trying to keep a calm voice. "We just found out they were missing this morning." "Don't play dumb. I know you're involved with it. Now tell me where they are." "We don't know," Elizabeth responded. She was also trying not to cry. "You need to chill out, Jaqual," Richard stated. "How do you even know if they are missing? Our mayor only said they were gone this morning. They could have easily went out to do something important." Jaqual walked over to Richard and slapped him in the face with the pistol. "This is your last chance to tell me where they are, or y'all are getting shot." Just then, there was a knock at the door. Jaqual had a confused look on his face. He must not have been expecting company. He walked backwards towards the door, making sure to keep the gun pointed at us. "Who's there?" he asked. "Delivery," we all heard someone on the other side say. Jaquar looked even more confused. He opened the door and walked outside while holding his gun behind his back. Even though he was not focusing on us, none of us wanted to move because we were too scared. Suddenly, someone tapped me on the back and I jumped. Standing behind me was a boy with long curly brown hair, and he had a skin tone similar to mine. He was wearing gray sweatpants, a white shirt, and a blue hoodie. It was an odd outfit for the summer. "Juthy?" Elizabeth whispered. She sounded confused, but still smiled. The boy smiled back. "It's great to see you, dude," Richard said, "but you shouldn't be here. Jaquar has a gun." "I'm here to help with that," Juthy replied. "How are you going to do that?" I asked. "It's top secret." He smiled while I looked at him in confusion. That's when the door slammed shut and Jaquar had the gun pointed at us again. "I don't know who the fuck you are," Jaquar said to Juthy, "but you better get down on the ground like the rest of them." He aimed the gun directly at him. Juthy just stood still and gave an innocent smile. "I will literally fucking shoot you right now and kill your ass." Jaquar was clearly angrier now from Juthy not listening to his command. "Okay," Juthy said politely. Jaquar aggressively pulled the trigger, but for some reason, no bullets came out. He tried a few more times, but there were still no bullets. "There's no way I didn't load that shit," Jaquar said. "Fuck that." He threw the gun to the floor. He then put his fists up, ready to fight Juthy. "I'm gonna beat your ass anyways." Jaquar sprinted towards Juthy in anger and started throwing punches. Juthy was blocking or dodging each punch, seemingly due to Jaquar winding up way too far for each punch, making each swing predictable. While Jaquar was distracted on Juthy, we all decided to make a sprint for the front door. Richard stopped as soon as he went out the door, while Henry, Elizabeth, and Suzanne stopped after running a little further. They ducked behind a bush. I shortly stopped after I passed Richard and noticed he wasn't running. "What's wrong?" I asked. "We shouldn't stick around while Jaquar has a gun." "It's not loaded," Richard responded. "And maybe we should help Juthy take him down." We suddenly heard someone yell at us. "Get the fuck off my property." We looked to the street in front of the house and saw a woman walking towards us with a gun. She aimed it in our general direction and fired a few shots. Thankfully, they all missed, but Richard and I were obviously startled. We both started running while staying low to the ground. Henry, Suzanne, and Elizabeth were able to run away at full speed since they were further away and not being targeted. The woman shot a few more shots towards me and Richard, but all of them still missed. She didn't chase after us once we got a little distance away. Instead, she walked inside the house, and that's when we heard one last gunshot go off.